welcome to Seen Through Glass, and welcome back to Vlogmas. This is day 2. Obviously the Porsche 718 Cayman S is now with Yanni getting wrapped. So today, as you can see, I'm in the Ferrari 360. Now, recently, a guy called Ed reached out to me on Instagram and asked if I've ever driven a manual Ferrari 355 or a manual Ferrari 430, the generation before and the generation after this 360. I said, no I haven't, Ed. And funnily enough, when I announced that I was hunting for a 360, and even when I revealed this car, lots of you asked why I hadn't considered a 355 or a 430. So I thought today would be the perfect opportunity to drive two cars, two Ferraris I've never driven before, but also talk to you guys about why I picked this 360 over a 355 or a 430. I have now made it to Ed's house, and as you can see, the cars are parked up behind me, both convertible Ferraris, so slightly different obviously to my coupe 360, but we are still in London, and it's not fun driving in London, especially not fun driving Ferraris in London, so we're going to get kitted up and head slightly outside to test these two cars on some nicer country roads. I apologise to any Greenpeace campaigners watching, but I love global warming. It is December and look at this weather. The perfect day to be hooning around in two convertible Ferraris. Ah! Anyway, 355, here we are. I am now in the 355 with the roof down, feeling like a 90s porn star. And listen to this. I think one of the most famous or iconic things about the 355 is the soundtrack, because whilst this car is now 20 years old, it was made between 95 or 94 and 99, so 20 years ago, it still sounds amazing. So you can start to forgive some of the sort of slightly older feeling parts, and that is the biggest thing with this 355 over my 360 is it does feel a lot more dated in my opinion. It feels more like a classic rather than a modern classic. And it's aesthetically, but it's also in the driving experience. It does feel a bit slower. You have to really rag it because the engine revs to 8,500 RPM, hence that insane soundtrack. But for me, the 355 doesn't hold the same place in my heart that the 360 does, because it was kind of the generation before me. When I was growing up, I kind of missed the 355. The 360s were already out, and that's what was catching my attention and what I fell in love with. And so whilst I've always appreciated the 355 and I've understood it, I've never really lusted after it, which is weird because if you look at the used car market, 355s have been going crazy in value over the last few years. They look to be much more desirable than 360s. And even though the manuals aren't as rare, the F1 box, I would arguably say, no, it wasn't more rare. There were probably as many F1 boxes and manuals made. Manuals are still appreciating quicker. So from a pure value point of view, 355s are more expensive than the 360s. That was my first thing. But as I say, I never really considered it anyway because I've just never lusted after one. This does feel like it might fall apart any second. Everything kind of rattles. And it might be specific to this car. I'm not saying all 355s are the same, but I think this crosses the border of modern to classic a bit too much for me personally. But it is so cool, and I really feel like I want a moustache and have some kind of 90s, I don't know, pop music going and just be cruising around in my yellow Ferrari. So it is 4:30 time after a delicious jacket potato lunch. I now get to experience this animal. Now, the 355, whilst highly desirable, and as I say, the manual is a sought after car, a manual 430 is a whole nother thing. Very few people ordered the 430 with the manual gearbox from factories, so you don't see many of them, let alone get the opportunity to drive. Oh, I'm going to turn that down for a second. And so that you guys can hear this. Woo! I'm looking forward to this one. Right, let's, electric seats. God, now this is a step up from even the 360. Funny enough though, the dials are very reminiscent of the 360. Actually, a lot of the stuff in here is reminiscent of the 360. Anyway, we have that manual gearbox. So, should we cruise? We are gonna cruise out. Immediately, I'm very much more aware of the increase in sort of power and technology that I have. 430 feels like it's a real car. Like, this is not that old. And yes, that 355 is very cool. And actually following it now, it looks kind of amazing. But this feels like a real proper supercar. The thing is though, the value of manual 430s have gone crazy because, as I say, from factory, so few people ordered them with the manual gearbox. Everyone went with the F1 because, well, it's giving it some revs in the 355 because it was developed properly by then. It was the last real F1 gearbox, and so it was pretty decent, and people were kind of more in tune with having automatic supercars. But yes, as I say, values have gone through the roof. So I think for a good manual 430 these days, you're thinking about £130,000. Whilst, as I've said before, a good manual 360, you're looking at around £70,000 or £80,000. I've even seen some manual 360s up at around £100,000. But even still, it's a considerable difference in price point. The thing about the 430s is, I feel like it lost some of the sort of the charm that the 360 and the 355 had. This is a proper full-blooded supercar. There is no getting away from that fact, and that's a great thing. And you've got carbon fiber everywhere, and I feel like I'm driving something truly special, but I don't connect with it in such an emotional way. I don't know what that is. Big thing not to forget with the 430, with the tech moving forward. I've got a Manatino now. We were talking about sport buttons at one point with the 355. You don't get anything with the 355. You have a sport suspension mode, which I think is just a light on your dashboard. I'm not sure it actually does anything. Well, here we can really start to play around with some of the settings, which now that we've got some engine temps, I think we can do. So I'm going to flick across. Oh, the noise! We got that underpass. We ready for this? Oh, this is special. Oh, this is a special car. This really feels like a huge step up. You've got to remember, I've skipped a generation now from the 355 to the 430, and this really... Whoa. Now, I really enjoyed the F1 gearboxed F430, but having this control, I still haven't revved over 5,000 RPM yet. I can start to understand why these cars are 100 and whatever plus £1,000, because this is a true experience. Just listen to that. Guys, I'm having a really good time. Don't know if that's obvious. I was not expecting that. My breath has been taken away. I mean, I knew the 430 was good, as I mentioned. I've always enjoyed the 430, but
It feels like a huge leap forward, especially over the 355, but definitely from even my own car. Ferrari took the 430 onto another level, and having that manual gearbox and that soundtrack, and this is just so special. So why I didn't buy this instead of the 360, we're now going to put it down to the fact that I'd never experienced it, but also price point. As I say, these have gone through the roof in terms of value over my car, and even though it's incredible to drive and that short experience there, for some reason it still doesn't have the same, it doesn't pull on my heart in the same way. It's a brilliant car and it's fantastic, but it doesn't have that emotional connection. The 360 holds such a special place in here that car doesn't quite. So I can appreciate it and I can love it and I can want to spend more time in a 430 manual, but I don't want one instead of the 360. But maybe it's an addition I can add to the fleet in 2018. What year is it? I'm so confused.